Almost a century before Katrin Sorrell would train Slayer recruits from her home base in the frontier town of Ramsgate, the legendary explorer Captain Ulrich Maas discovered the ram. Named for its shape, which resembled a ram's horn when viewed from above, it was the first stable island chain found in centuries. While the interior island clusters like Ostia and Avalania had long formed the center of what passed for civilization in the Shattered Isles, expansion was only just becoming a priority in the near millennium since the upheaval broke the world. On the largest of the Ram Islands, Maas established a makeshift port for his expeditionary ships. Since the big island had not been fully scouted, he ordered the hasty construction of a temporary wall around the tiny new settlement. The heavy, reinforced portal that led through this wall to the rest of the island gave the place its name, Ramsgate. Within months, Maas had sent back word to his business partners and other allies in St. Avelaine. This outpost had the potential to become the busiest port on the frontier, and a busy port required busy people to live and work there. Settlers, in short, were needed. Needed to keep the home fires of Ramsgate burning while Maas and his expedition of discovery continued their work to map and connect the many disparate cultures of the Shattered Isles. Needed to build the infrastructure that would support an influx of even more settlers down the line. Needed to support the Slayers who could clear the big island of any behemoth that might dwell there, and the surrounding isles besides. It was these famed first-wave settlers who experienced, and named, the first Dark Harvest. These early Ramsgate settlers had never experienced anything like a week-long eclipse before. There were few scholars among them to explain the mechanics of the situation, but there were farmers, and they knew what total darkness meant. Nothing would grow. Their crops would never even have the chance to get started, and that meant their meager stores of foodstuffs would run out far sooner than expected. That was when a miracle of sorts happened. As the moon emerged in the sky, its wand of silver light caused a hardy species of squash, the humble pumpkin, to bloom and grow with startling speed. Ornery researchers would later determine that this was due to the aether-infused seeds previously scattered by birds interacting with the specific wavelength of moonlight illuminating the Ram Island group. But to the frightened settlers, it meant they had hope, for they wouldn't starve during the darkness. Of course, as everyone in Ramsgate now knows, the path of the ecliptics didn't just darken the skies over the Ram, or simply bring forth a bumper crop of tasty squash. The extended darkness also brought with it strange combinations of aggressive behemoths. Unfortunately for the early settlers, only a small contingent of Slayers had arrived with them, intending to begin the process of ensuring the island beyond the gate was clear. These brave individuals hadn't anticipated also dealing with 2 or more behemoths at a time, on unfamiliar isles with courses that hadn't even yet been plotted. Overburdened and suffering losses almost immediately, the leader of the local Slayer teams, a man named Malden Sorrell, sent out for what came to be known as the First Call. With the help of an aethersmith who had been part of the first wave, Malden Sorrell used etheric radio to send out an urgent cry for help to any and all Slayers within range. To the relief of Sorrell and Ramsgate settlers, the call was answered with a vengeance. Slayers descended upon the new city by the score, undeterred by the seemingly endless night and ready to face the challenges presented by the behemoths the locals had dubbed the Dark Guardians of the Ram. This sudden population boom required the Ramsgate docks to be built almost overnight, as dozens of Slayer cloud cutters, sky sloops, and wind barks arrived. With little else to feed their newly arrived saviors, the locals made do with the sudden bounty of moonlight crops, creating pumpkin pies, soups, roasts, and even desserts. After a little more than a week, the sun began to emerge from behind the ecliptic archipelago, and a grateful Ramsgate populace surveyed what had become of their new home in such a short time. The ramshackle temporary docks would need to be properly rebuilt. The pumpkin crops no longer grew, but left behind enough of that valuable foodstuff to supplement their stores for the rest of the year. The bizarre behemoths that had emerged were beaten back by the massive influx of Slayers, and many of those Slayers decided to stay in Ramsgate for the time being. It was, as they saw, a perfect launching point for the ongoing battle to save humanity from the mighty beasts that threatened them all. In the end, the Dark Harvest wasn't simply a harrowing time for the first settlers of Ramsgate. Without the call Malden Sorrell sent to the rest of the world, Ramsgate might well have survived, but it likely wouldn't have become the tip of the spear in the battle against the behemoths that threatened the Shattered Isles. Newcomers may find it a strange experience, locals may almost come to blows over the best recipes for pumpkin pie and spiced ale, and slayers may find themselves hard-pressed to keep the island safe. But the city will always celebrate this annual week of darkness. For without the Dark Harvest, there would be no Ramsgate.